Okay guys, so good morning.
Hey, good morning.
We're back on, I'm recording this session so it'll follow the same kind of format as yesterday with me talking, ask questions at any time, but then you be recorded, and then at the end we have some time also for questions off the record for those of you who prefer not to ask questions and have it recorded, basically. Also, one or two of you shared that you were spacing out a lot in yesterday's talk, and maybe it was me being boring, or it was, as some of you suspected, it was, the content. Some people, the way their defensive layer operates is when certain kind of emotionally provocative content comes in, they just shut down. They just shut down. It's like the screen comes up, they can't remember anything, and they just go blank. So if you think this might have been you, then try to breathe a bit more, really stay in your body and feel and stay present, and then we can overcome this. You can overcome this little thing. But let's just quickly recap what we did yesterday. And it was a bit chaotic. And we looked at the problem of psychotherapy historically, but it's coming a lot from the mind. It's coming a lot from people who probably aren't very emotionally fluid or emotionally intelligent, emotionally competent. They're quite in avoidance of emotions. So they're articulating a theory of how to heal people, but they themselves, even the theory for them, is probably a way of avoiding their own emotionality. So it's an inherent problem. We looked a little bit at this kind of, what I saw, sometimes I call it the Osho journey, maybe we'll recap with that. And then we looked at the idea that, the real grand cause of all the issues that we have as individuals and as society, as a global planet, and all of this is repression. It's the capacity to repress emotions, and what we can repress through trauma, or we can repress through conditioning. These are the two main types. The trauma, you have two kinds of woundings that are likely to be traumatic. Abandonment, wanting something and it's not there, or something coming too close into your boundaries, the opposite. And but with conditioning, because we are social beings and we have social needs, for friends, for lovers, for a role in society, we can get easily manipulated into trying to be a certain person to get those needs met. And very few individuals can step beyond that in reality in our society. And then we looked at the kind of how repression takes place for the prefrontal cortex through its role, so to speak, to project an image of a certain kind of person out, represses a lot of areas of our natural fluid emotionality. It just represses it, and it represses it into the back line of the body mostly. It's not exact, but mostly around the shoulders. The lower back is a really favourite area to stick stuff, and the backs of the legs. And but also what we tend to do is to compress around certain emotionally evocative centres, which is a schema a little bit like the chakras, but probably usefully more simple. The throat, the heart, and the gut. Big kind of emotional centres or expressive centres in the body. Keep those things compressed or pad them out. And people, because of all this repression that's going on, and because of there's an underlying charge which all this repressed emotion exerts inside our psyche, we get into ritual behaviours, using substances, whether it's just coffee or whether it's hard drugs, alcohol. We distract ourselves, we get into all sorts of routines of blaming, judging, making the outside wrong. Essentially what happens is we wall ourselves up in our own little tower, our own little fortress, just to survive, through the belief that we have to keep projecting this thing outwards. Two types of holding, essentially, or two types of ways, more accurately, two types of ways that trauma or conditioning is held in the body. One type, a person that tenses, clenches the muscles and they stay in this unnatural shape, and the other type, where a more extreme type in many ways, where they evacuate the muscle system, just give up, no, fuck it, I'm not here anymore. Yeah, a little bit about, I think what we're talking about here was, this sense that you can resolve a lot of stuff from a mental level, and we'll talk a bit more about this probably tomorrow, but if there's still a lot of holding, or these dead zones, these areas where you've evacuated in your body, you haven't really achieved much. In fact, you may have made your conditions worse. And we've been through in the last 20, 30 years, when I look at the New Age, when you look at the positivity movement coming out of America largely, a lot of mind-based therapy, neuro-linguistic programming, CBT, nothing wrong with all of this stuff. But if there's not an awareness of a bodily component, you can end up more fucked up, basically. And your body may get very ill, if you're not aware of the bodily component. We'll talk a bit more about that tomorrow. Stress, holding patterns, dead zones. So today, let's talk about anxiety.
Yay.
Yes.
Fear.
Anxiety in particular is really, it's like a kind of, in a sense, it's one of the low-level mental health conditions that I often work with clients with. The other one is depression. And I wouldn't say I had a total understanding of these from a body-based perspective, but what I see is that the underlying condition for both anxious people and depressives is anxiety. And depression is simply a way to mask the anxiety and to really just send the whole system into a downward state, your whole body and mind into a downward state to not feel the anxiety, in a sense. So, and when we look at anxiety and the impact on our lives as individuals, it's kind of like, to me, it's like, if you are here, a little stick person or whatever, and you have all these possibilities in your life to go in different directions, whether it's towards the most exciting partner that you could be with, whether it's towards, being the boss of some kind of company, really being out there, totally great, whether it's to having the best friendships that you could really, people who really nourish you, who you really look up to, who can support you. When we move out into the world with these things, usually at some point what stops us is anxiety, in a sense. We come, towards the best, and as we start to move there, there's some level of anxiety that comes in, and we kind of internalize and move back. Settle for second best, settle for third best, struggle. Does it resonate at all?
What I've been realizing, that's a major factor for me, because I pushed away so much opportunities in people. Let's say it's someone that is really attractive, and even though they're interested in me, there's fear of not only it's the anxiety itself, but it's being accompanied by negative mindset, it feels like I'm freaking out, it's not only doing it, but also I'm freaking out that they will push me away. That's a little fear that I see there.
Yeah, fear to take a risk.
Yeah.
Fear to take a risk, anxiety. So let's just involve you guys a bit, and who here has a kind of personal understanding of anxiety? What would you say it is if you had to give a personal definition? Could be a textbook definition, but more personal one is exciting. Anybody got an idea? Just doesn't have to be right or wrong. Just
for me, it's a physical experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real sort of almost like something wants to explode out of my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Just a rib cage.
Yeah.
And then it's understanding what that actual experience is, and then that creates a lot of thought processing, and probably heightens that experience even more, and then it's sort of a circular motion.
Mm-hmm. So you mean it can kind of reinforce itself through the mental process?
Yeah, it's like, why is this coming up? What's that there for?
Yeah,
all of a sudden,
you can find yourself in an anxiety-creating loop in your mind.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I definitely experience it more in the mental. I'll start thinking about something, and then it'll snowball. The potentials that might happen, and then the negatives, what would the negatives look like? Then it's I'm lost in a world.
Ramping it up somewhere.
Yeah, the more it doesn't end.
A mind negative snowball. Yeah. Great. Great.
For me, it's more a lot of tension in my shoulders. I feel tension in my neck, I can't speak up. My breathing is becoming really chest breathing, swallow. My belly is tense, and a lot of sweating also.
Tight breathing.
Yeah. Mouth closed, hold on to not breathing properly.
Could you say it's a form of compulsive judging and blaming, whether that's yourself or other people?
Just look for yourself. What it means to you, basically. Is that how it manifests inside of you? How you?
I've never
see
thought
it?
about it too much. Just the discussions we've had this morning. It's just I thought that if I can remove judging, remove blaming from myself or other people, I'd probably eliminate most anxieties that I have.
personal idea, a personal handle on it for them?
Yeah, well, handle.
Well, like how it is for you, yeah.
Well, the latest one for me was I've started doing workshops every month on something that I'm really passionate about that I haven't done workshops on before. So, and I was experiencing tremendous anxiety, and it was physical as well, but a lot of it, it was physical after the mental stuff started coming in, and then it kind of mixes up. And it was a lot of self-doubt, and it was a lot of self-criticism. It was a lot of, I'm not good enough to do this. And I have enough experience and everything, but that doubt was overwhelming. I'm not going to be able to do it. They're going to think I'm odd. I'm just not going to be able to, to be myself. And it's just, it was a lot of self-criticism and self-judgment. It was just overwhelming.
So what happened? You had to back out, or you?
No, I didn't back out. I just prepared very, very well. I did a lot of breathing, a lot of techniques that, I'm so grateful that I have. And it went very, very well. The first one maybe wasn't perhaps as, that was afterwards. It was like being an interview. You feel great when you're there, and you come out and you start criticizing, I should have done this and I didn't do that. The second one was a lot better. And I guess because the anxiety I experienced the first time, I realized that actually it's not.
Yeah.
But second time as well, I had anxiety again. Maybe to the lower degree, but again it was that self-doubt. So I ended up just learning my material by heart.
Yeah. Thank you.
Over preparing. But yeah, self-doubt is a big one.
Yeah. So it's like you're doing something new. You're stretching out in a new direction, and then we come to anxiety. We come to anxiety, and we can just move this a little bit. We come to anxiety, and then. It can ramp up, it can do all sorts of things. We can look a little bit at this ramping up mechanism maybe in a bit. But I guess, for me at its core, anxiety is the sense in the mind, in my thinking process, that I'm not okay as I am, essentially. That I need to do something to change it. It's like this thought comes up, this idea comes up into my mind, I'm not okay as I am right now. And what I want to do is just draw a kind of one of these, which I like, these kind of vague diagrams or maps which can sometimes usefully represent this kind of concept. If we consider maybe the whole range of what you could experience in life to be bordered by this circle, and we looked yesterday at trauma and conditioning and repressed emotions, and we say that where emotions have been repressed out of awareness, they occupy almost like little complexes on the outskirts a bit of this whole behavioural circle that we could occupy. Maybe there's a big lump of pain there where something bad happened with your mum, for example. Or here there's a lot of anger where you experience some level of invasion from the father. And there's these kind of complexes around of repressed feelings, like a stored charge in your system. What tends to happen, you're existing at this centre in here, and over time we shrink our behavioural box because towards the periphery of our experience there is this stuff going on. We're not even necessarily aware of it. Usually by the age of 30 or 20 even, we're living in quite a tight little behavioural box. And if we start to stretch out, of course what we do is we start to encounter these repressed feelings. On an emotional level, we start to, at some level, re-experience, and this is where the anxiety is really coming from. As we stretch out in different directions emotionally by taking a challenge, going towards a new partner, going towards a new role, doing something totally different, trying to get into a group of friends that seem like perhaps maybe very high status in some way, something like that. What we're really doing is moving by extending our behavioural boundaries. Does this make sense? Yeah. But extending our behavioural boundaries, we're coming close to where feelings are stored and repressed inside our system. And what's useful to really understand about this is that around all these complexes that exist within us of stored pain, stored anger, and other emotions, but mostly around those first, there are defences. They're like defensive walls. And so what happens is, as we get close, before we even get to really experience the emotion that's being held there, some form of defensive strategy comes in, and it basically tells us we're not okay, we need to go back.
Yeah.
It's like a big warning sign that suddenly comes up in some form and says you need to go back to safety somehow. You need to go back to what you know is okay. You know?
What I want to say, I have like moments where I experience that like a lot. Let's say I'm moving towards a goal that I want something to achieve, and you know I'm quite like comfortable with that. But like then comes the negative feedback, and then it reinforces that belief that like that thing that you said, oh, things are not cool, I'm not cool. Let's go back to my shell again. And then like I project the same thing to some other opportunity that comes along, and I don't even take the step. You know, that's how I realized that. I kind of self-sabotage in that way.
Exactly.
So that's something. What is something that we can work if we realize that there's like a pattern like this?
Yeah, we can work it in, and how we really work it essentially. I mean, how you get out of this is hopefully, you know, or probably fairly clear. Is that if we can, you know, allow this to keep on expanding, what we feel okay with, to keep on expanding, and to start to integrate, you know, these repressed feelings, then our overall sense of ourselves, actually when we just stand or sit, the feeling of the body is more expanded, essentially. You've got more feeling inside, and you know that the emotional triggers, you know, that they will affect you, but they don't stop you from moving. They don't stop you from moving, essentially. That's the idea, and it's very easy to say, and very easy often to understand, but we keep on expanding, taking more challenges, stretching ourselves in different directions. But what happens for everyone is these old defense systems come in, and usually we end up going back.
Yes.
We end up going back or collapsing back into old negative behaviors. And these defenses are a little bit like, it's like a kind of defect of evolution, perhaps you could see it as, or simply an unnecessary byproduct of the fact that we have this emotional brain, but we also have a very powerful neocortex and prefrontal cortex that distinguishes us from animals. And because of this, it's like this defense. Do you ever hear the story of like these Japanese soldiers who were like, after World War II, they were still on an island in the South Pacific, and it was like virtually uninhabited, this island, for like, you know, 30 years after the war. It was in the 70s or 80s or something. And these guys are really old now, but they don't know the war is over. You know, they think the Second World War is still going on. It's 1982 or something, and obviously it ended decades before, but they think the war is still going on. And so some guys, tourists or something, rocked up at this island, or explorers, National Geographic or something, to come and look at something, and suddenly they found they're under machine gun fire from all these fucking pensioners, Japanese pensioners, who basically think they're an invading force. And what they had to do in the end was luckily the platoon's commander or something was still alive in Japan, and they flew him out there, and he told them to stand down now. And that is very analogous to what happens here, but we don't have a platoon commander, unfortunately, to get us to stand down, you know, to get the defences to stand down. So these defences, which were probably necessary when we were a very small child, or, you know, when we were in a very vulnerable position and we experienced trauma, or we conditioned ourselves very heavily after that, these defences are actually no longer needed. We now can feel the anger and integrate it. We now can experience the pain and integrate it. But 99.9% of the time, we simply don't do that, because the defences are still operating, and they give us all sorts of thought patterns which basically tell us to go back. Danger, go back. And this is all that's really happening. And in fact, we don't even get often to even know what's happening inside. We just get anxiety. We're not even really aware often what it is that in an internal sense we're anxious about, you know, because before we've even approached the actual core of a wound or the outside of a wound, we're already being warded off. Already being warded off. And we can look at this process with another little map. If you imagine that this is like the sea. Okay, this is like the sea, and here's the sky up here, and here's the land underneath the sky. The land underneath the sea, the bottom of the sea, like one of those little drawings that kids do. And in here is the shit, you know, this is the pain and the anger complex is all sitting here at the base of what some psychologists call the subconscious or unconscious mind. And here the sky is what you're aware of. Like right now, what you can feel right now, what you're aware of in your thinking, what you're aware of in the sensation of your body. And if we start to do in the group room certain processes, the idea of these processes is to bring this stuff up, so if you can become aware of it, you can breathe through it, and then you can be healed. It's no longer stored here in the base.
Let it go.
Yeah, you let it go. You go through, maybe you go through an emotional journey with it, or maybe it's more like a sensation of acute discomfort and anxiety, but you keep breathing and going through it, and you're free. You know, essentially it's the same as this map here. You simply extend the boundaries, you reach for points that are problematic, and you breathe through, and you're okay. It will be easy. But what's happening here, before it even gets into awareness, here we have some lump of, you know, you're doing the bow and arch, or you're doing this crucifix, it hurts like fuck. Before you get to really experience the depth of a complex, defense comes in. And the idea of this defensive layer is to do anything, usually from a narrative level, usually from the stories that come in the mind, to get you the fuck out of there. To get you out of a position that's causing problems. Long before you even get to experience what's actually happening. This is how the defensive layer operates. So, you know, I could be in the morning practice, but okay, I'm going to do my arch for 10 minutes today, or whatever, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And I get about 2 minutes in, it all feels very normal, and I think, this is a waste of time today. No fucking point in doing this, or, oh shit, I meant to reply to Barry's email and he's waiting for me. You know, bottom line is, it's trying to create a narrative, and it's trying to get my awareness to attach to the narrative, and then it's trying to get me to move out, to get out. You know, as simple as that. You know, it'll do anything. If you're a very conceptual person, maybe you'll think, this is a waste of fucking time, you know, this doesn't work. You know, I need to go back to my whatever psychological belief system I had before, whatever. You know, basically the whatever it is, the defensive layer's job is just to get you the fuck out of there.
Technology is massive on that now, isn't it? It seems like every time you want to zone out, you've got your phone to...
It makes it easier for the defensive layer to operate. Yeah. If you were just alone in a room with no distractions, or, you know, in some kind of sensory deprivation, you know, I don't know what exactly, but yeah, if you had nothing there to distract you, then it would be harder for it to operate. You know, that's why, you know, this is why when therapy is usually taking place traditionally in groups, basically. It's in groups, because in a group, you've got someone over you, monitoring and controlling your time to a degree. You've also got peer pressure from other people. Many of you may have experienced being in a group and wanting to pull out of something, but thinking, no, the others aren't pulling out of it, fuck it, I'm not going to look like a twat in front of them like the weak one, I'm going to keep going. And that actually, in that case, in that instance, the peer pressure was useful, the competitive instinct was useful, you know. You've also got other people around that you can share your experience with, you know, who may, you know, feel what also and liken to, and then you think, hey, I'm not alone with this, I'm not alone with this. This is traditionally exactly why so many people, or in the past really, group processes was the main way forward. You come for weekend workshops, and then maybe you do 5 days or a week, 10 days, stuff like this, and the effect goes deeper because the power of your defensive layer is kind of weakened. It's not totally destroyed, but it's weakened. But nowadays in particular, with a lot of people wanting to work on their own, there's not so much body-based kind of therapy around. You know, it's quite hard to find. And also, the level of technology, the ease with which we can become distracted, you know, the sheer technology for distraction means that it's, on one level, there's more people in a sense, I think, than 20 years ago who really want to go through stuff and step up. But at the same time, there aren't so many therapists about, and there's all this kind of distractive technology which can take us awake all the time. Take us away. So it's kind of on one level, there's a greater openness in people to look and to go deep, and at the same time, it's harder for them to do that. It's harder for them to do that. Does this kind of make sense? Yeah. So who could give me an example of the kind of defensive thought patterns that they spotted in their own psyche, you know, that operate. Yes.
With me, I see it's happening almost like all the time when we're doing something, some like really stressful position, whether it's the bow or the crucifixion. What it tends to happen is like my brains go to stories is as a way to avoid the pain.
Yeah.
Or I found excuses.
What story?
Like that this isn't working, or
Yeah.
you know.
This isn't working. Great one. Or did you have another one that's popular for your brain?
A lot is like that is the most common.
Okay.
That's not working. That's
Yeah.
all.
No point.
No point to that.
Anyone else?
I'll just take a little break. For me, it's when I'm working and I just take a little break. I'll just hop on social media, just take a little break and end up doing it 50 times that day. Just take a little break. And it allows me to zone out.
Yeah. No need to push yourself, you mean?
Not need to push myself, yeah.
Like a kind of reward, like you've worked hard already, or
Yeah,
Mm,
no, I done
yeah.
20 minutes.
it's a popular one for me as well. Yeah. Like
I find I negotiate with it. Like I noticed when we were doing dynamic yesterday with the who, you know, I was like, I'm not going to drop my arms. I'm not going to drop my arms. I'm not going to drop my arms. And I did it, but then I was like, oh my god! But the meditation after, when they say stop, I'm gonna have to get my arms up. And it was like, all right, get to the end of the who, and then you know you don't have to keep your arms up for the meditation if you can't.
Mm.
And that kind of shut the voice up then. And then I got through the who and I didn't drop my arms. But then come the meditation, it was like, okay, you know, you did it, well done. Here's your reward, like you can let your arms rest a little bit.
Mm.
And then I was fighting it, and then I would like let them go down for a little bit, and then I'd come back up.
Mm.
And then I would go through the same thing, and then it would go back up.
Mm.
And it was like negotiating with it.
Yeah, negotiation. This is great. This is what goes on between these different parts of the mind. Like for all of you to get in this space, there will be a part of you that really wants to step the fuck up, unless you just totally didn't realise what the workshop was about, you know, and now thinking fuck. But like, you know, there will be a part of you that really wants to step up, move forwards, be the best person you can possibly be. And there'll be another part that's just comfort addicted, whiny, and just wants to stay in a nice, safe, steady little environment that you know and can control. And so this negotiation between these sides goes on. And it's also, in a sense, I think, you know, quite intelligent in a way. Sometimes I've had the experience of pushing myself super hard, and then it's like I almost traumatise myself to the point I'm never going to do that again. You know, it's like I could get you now. Okay, let's go and do 15 minutes down, 15 minutes up in the crucifix. You know, and maybe I could hold it so that you'd all get through it. But the chances are, at least half of you would think there's no fucking way I'm ever going to do that shit again. And then is that useful? No, it's not so useful, you know. It's like you've got to be a bit intelligent. You've got to be a bit intelligent with the pain and with the anxiety. And there probably does have to be some level of negotiation. Thank you, Ben. Anybody else?
Well, I suppose in that notion then, it's kind of like a thought process where if I do a big hit and it doesn't work, then there's no point going down that road again.
Right.
So is that almost like creating that sort of sense of worthwhile denial, if that makes sense?
Well, I think it could be, but also, you know, I mean, if there's intelligence in that as well. You know, there's intelligence in that because, you know, we try lots of different therapies inevitably, or different strategies, and you don't know that everything's going to work for you. So, you know, in reality, probably if you say, well, okay, say we're going to try bioenergetics for a month or something like that, you just need to set up what is a realistic kind of target for you to do, and make sure you complete that, and then see if you feel better. You know, because you can't just stick at every therapy and forever. What if it really isn't working for you? Maybe bioenergetics doesn't work for you. It's possible. You know? Maybe it worked for whatever reason. You know, so it's more like as a way. One of the strategies we can use to get through this is to set clear kind of intentions as to what we're going to do. Have a timer. So okay, this week, each morning I'm going to do 20 minutes of bow and arch. I'm going to do 3 minutes up, down, 3 times around, 18 minutes. And to make sure we complete that, no matter what bullshit mind story comes up, to make sure we complete it. And then you can assess at the end, okay, did it work or not? We've become a bit more objective and scientific about things, you know? So you can really trial the therapy out, you know? See how it's working. Great. Who else has stories here that tend to come in a lot?
I mean, I just tend to zone out, just think about trivial stuff. You know, I could give an example. Is I don't know what we're out for tea tonight, or that's just stupid things. I'll just think about or live here or stuff. Stuff.
About the future or the past or stuff or
Generally the future. Yeah.
The future, Suddenly becoming preoccupied with the future, or just kind of even not necessarily with emotions, just kind of fantasizing a bit about the future, or
fantasizing like what I have to do and what will happen, and
that's a different. But for you, is it?
Yeah, just that. Yeah.
Is it fantasizing? Yeah. Having like a fantasy world in our mind that we can always escape to. Well, we get Fantasy Island. Remember that? Probably no one here is old enough to remember Fantasy Island. I don't know. Maybe Christopher. You know, having a little fantasy world in our mind that we can always escape to, where you know we don't have to feel our body so much. And anybody else aware of the power of your own defensive layer?
Yeah, mine's making comfort, really, just seeking a bit of comfort. Like,
So what's the excuse to seek the comfort?
well, I suppose putting it off. I can do this in a minute. Put the TV on, or
Putting off.
Yeah, putting off.
It's a kind of negotiation, hey?
Yeah.
I am going to do it, just not now.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Procrastination.
Exactly, yeah.
Is judging a defense as well? So you judge someone, you go, oh, they're not worth it. Just do them.
Well, I guess it's more like, you know, I'm looking at specifically here is like when you're in a posture or when you're deliberately opening up this area of your body, you know, where the trauma is, you know, you could go into a judgment perhaps about the technique or about the person leading it and thinking, no, fuck it, I'm not gonna bother. If that were the bottom line is it's some kind of thinking behaviour usually, or something that takes you out of what you're doing.
I was doing some sun salutations this morning, and I had this thought. I was like, oh, I should do 12. And the second I had that thought, another thought was like, oh, really? 12? Like, you're going to do 12 though? Like, you always say you're going to do that, but you never do. And it was like, you know, it's like the second I had that intention, which is like a good intention, you're just like, let's do 12. Like, you know, I was doing a few, and I was like, no, let's like 12 as a sequence. It was almost like, you know, it's like the devil on my shoulder, like, well, really? Like, you sure it's quite a lot of work, and you know, there's like, you don't normally, you know, like, it's weird. It's like, I feel like that whole self-sabotage thing. It's like, you know, I have the intention, like, I'm going to do a juice fast, and then the next day I'm eating chips. You know, and I'm like, how the fuck did I had a really good, and I meant it when I had that thought. I was like, I'm going to do a juice fast, like I want to do a juice fast, and then somehow, you know, it's like I'm eating chips, and then it's like, well, how the fuck did that happen?
Yeah, that's interesting, but I just want to mention something, what it also could be a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there can be a side of the mind that is really hard-ass, you know, it can be an internalised voice of authority. In classical psychology, they call it the superego in Freudian psychology. An internalised voice of authority, often from the parents, which could set an extremely hard task. And then the other part of the mind says, 12, because even to me, 12 sun salutations sounds like quite a lot. Okay, maybe that's my own defensive layer. But also, it could be like, the hard-ass part of the mind is saying one thing, and then the comfort side of the mind is saying, oh God, no, I can't do that. But the net result is feeling not so good about yourself.
Totally.
Not so good about, because you didn't do it as good as your superego wanted you to do it.
Yes.
So it's like it can be a little bit of a setup to end up feeling a bit shit about yourself.
That's, which feeds into that whole sort of defensive thing. It's like, well, so you shouldn't, it's like, totally.
So then how do you move through that? What's you gotta?
I mean, I think what you're saying there makes a lot of sense, and like there's a whole sort of like, you know, because I study astrology and like looking at what Saturn represents in my chart. It's like I've had it said to me so many different ways. Saturn is like structure, and I have that, and when I was having a reading, someone said like, you know, it's like you're always going to have that angle of like judgment and this harshness to it.
Yeah.
So you need to balance it. So it's like, is it practical to do 12?
Exactly.
So you just started spontaneously doing it. did you plan it? Are you ready for it? Like a juice fast, that takes planning. Just because you have the idea that you should do a juice fast doesn't mean you should fucking do a juice fast. Like you should plan for it.
Yeah.
And then if you end up eating chips after you plan for it, you could be like, you probably know why.
Yeah.
But the fact that I get like an idea and I'm like, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be stronger if I do that. I'm gonna do 100 push-ups. But then I don't do it. And that feeds into this whole negative cycle of like, well, yeah, so you didn't do that. You see, you're not worthy. You know, you said you were going to do that and you didn't. And it's like knowing how to frame that, it's taken a long time to sort of be like, well, all right, you want to do 100 push-ups. Well, let's do 10 first. And then look at doing 20. And then maybe we'll do 100 if we plan it. But don't just have this like, you know, because it never works out. And I think I'm learning how to like understand that a bit more. Instead, because I used to identify that as my will. And I'd be like, I want to do it. And then I'd fail. And then I would judge that against my will.
And so the end product is that you're constantly not feeling good enough.
Yeah, totally. Almost
and then that obviously does not support you in the slightest.
You know?
So it's great to take personal responsibility to catch that voice and say, I do want to do some form of workout or whatever it is, but I'm going to make sure it's really practical and that I can realistically achieve it. You know, but I don't end up feeling like shit about myself, you know, because there's no one needs to do that.
Something that I wanted to add to what he said is I can like really resonate with that because what I realized, I heard in Amsterdam one therapist said that when you procrastinate, because something that I'm really struggling, procrastination, let's say I have a goal I want to move out from my job because it's not comfortable, or the partner that I'm with, it's not okay, or my life situation, let's say, or to change. I always like put it off, and what I realized, like he said, that you always get a certain payoff from that. And for me, I realized that it's like, I just don't want to feel that discomfort. Oh, it's much more better now. Let's eat like shitty food than eating healthy. Or like, let's don't wake up in the early and don't do the ball.
But it's the same process. You've got to make sure you're not just setting yourself up to keep it stay in mediocrity. By setting unnaturally high targets and then getting to beat yourself up when you don't achieve them. You know? The target is actually not the point. And the not achieving it is not the point. The point is, it's a repetitive, addictive behaviour to keep on. And there's no point in just feeling bad about doing that, because then you just do it even more. You just have to start to take responsibility to move forward. And now I'm going to change that. I'm not going to set unnaturally high targets. I'm going to rationally assess my targets, whether they're realistic and practical for me. Rationally assess the targets that your mind gives you. If you've got this harder. Sometimes it comes from the dad, or even the mum, you know.
But for me, it's like more when I want, let's say, to wake up really early in the morning and do something like meditation or like something physical. It's like that thing of like, I don't want to feel uncomfortable right now. It's good staying just in bed and like.
But understand a little bit, Maurice. I think you're missing the point a little bit. Take in the point. The point is, if you end up feeling not so good about yourself because you set the high target and didn't achieve it. What's really going on is just like a cyclical thing in your mind where it's actually stopping you developing. You've got to set realistic targets. Otherwise you're going to be caught up in this addictive pattern of always kind of like one foot on the gas pedal, I'm going to go forwards, and then, oh no, I didn't do it, I feel really shit about myself. I'm going to go forwards, didn't do it, I feel really shit. So you have to take responsibility for the targets that you're setting yourself and really be a bit more rational and objective about them. Are they practical? Is it practical to get up tomorrow morning at 4 o'clock and do 3 hours of sun salutations or whatever? You know, it's like, is it really practical? You know, and are you just, if you do it once, you're then going to tell yourself that you've got to do it every day, or you're just not good enough. And you can look psychologically, if there's a psychological component from your childhood, that, you know, someone who you had to achieve a lot to get love from. You know, when you look at high achieving people, sometimes that is also a component where they're constantly driven. You know, as a child, their parents made them really do something good, or they wouldn't get the love, and maybe the parent never gave it to them anyway. I had a former partner who was very driven like this from her dad. You know, where her dad was constantly like on her case with the whole family. In fact, that they had to achieve, and then she and all her siblings, they all really got into achieving all the time, but they were never very happy or satisfied with it. In some ways it had a positive component because they became successful, but they also some of them got really drained by stress, you know, because it was but what was motivating them to try and achieve was only, you know, this belief that somewhere you're going to get the love. It's the child trying to achieve, thinking one day Daddy is going to say, "Hey, well done. I'm really proud of you." And Daddy never said that when they were a kid. You know, it never got to a point where Dad said, "Hey, I really appreciate you." You know, stay awake, Chris. Yeah. Does any of this resonate, or are you just zoning out?
I don't know, sorry.
Zoning out. Why don't you stand up and shake a little bit? Everyone else can stay, so you just stand up and breathe a bit more deeply, just to keep yourself in the space, mates. Not to feel bad about yourself. You're doing great.
I think also, like in my experience, it's a lot about being realistic and actually softening. Like for me, the majority of my life, I was very, very driven. You know, set targets and, you know, quite disciplined. I think it's my nature as well.
Yeah.
Discipline, you know, I'll get up, I'll do it. And I would set unrealistic targets. So what I think what's changed and the way that I deal with that is actually that softness and that and balance. You know, like I do Ayurveda, you know, and I follow it, and sometimes I will do an Ayurvedic fast. So, or you know, a specific cleanse where you can do the same thing. But my work would be very stressful. Just being in work actually for me is stressful because at the moment the main place is not where I want to be. So you know, but I'm doing this cleanse, which can be quite hard, especially you know when I'm stressed. So it's actually understanding that.
Yeah.
Just saying, well, actually, it's okay for me to have this and that, or you know, to add something to it. You know, just to get me through that. I don't have to be cruel to myself. It is like cruelty. It's like violence towards yourself.
It's personal to the individual. Yeah.
You know, over the edge. It's like it's about love, self-love.
Yeah.
You know, actually, you know, I don't have to do this.
Yeah.
And be okay with that. It's not guilt.
Yeah.
You know, because actually it comes back to that love.
Yeah.
But that in itself can be quite hard for us because that is not, a lot of us, you know, just don't get there that easily. You know, it might sound a bit wishy-washy, but it's not actually, it's hard for a lot of people.
It's hard for people to receive love.
Yeah, it's hard for a lot of people to have that, to say, well, I don't have to push myself actually, and I'm okay with that. I could be realistic, I don't have to do 100 sit-ups, you know, I could do 50 today.
Yeah.
Because this is how I feel and my body is exhausted today and I can take a day off, and that's okay because I could restart tomorrow and that's okay. It's also having that balance when you know you could push and you're happy with that. There's no resistance. You know, where to push with there is some resistance, and having this awareness and saying, well, actually today is not a good day for me, and being okay with that as well.
Yeah, it's having, underneath it all, it's having vigilance.
It's softness.
Just vigilance, because if you are vigilant, you see, maybe you do really want to step up and you do want to push yourself from a conscious space. Or maybe you're doing it from an unconscious space, trying to get acceptance from the dad, who even though he's gone, you still want to get his love in some way. So when you can see that you're coming from an unconscious space, then you need to look what's really happening inside and see what's appropriate. It's not that there's one strategy for everybody.
Well, of course there isn't.
No. So it's just that vigilance is the core. When you have the vigilance, then you can see. Then you can see. And then also, you can change your behaviour, but also you can investigate the wound. Investigate the wound and what's really going on inside the psyche. Because even in someone, say, where they have got this behaviour, of repetitively pushing themselves into too much and feeling not good enough and this kind of thing, underneath that probably is also some wound sitting in the psyche, sitting in this psyche. And then if you investigate that and try to get into that and clear that, then you will diminish the power of this complex to keep operating inside of you. It will diminish. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if it is a feeling of, like maybe you took a defensive posture of low self-esteem as a child or something like that, you know, because your dad was really on you, or your mum, or something else that was going on around, or you're just a bit that orientated. You know, at some point is to say, where is the complex driving me to, and to consciously go there. Not to simply go around it and do different behaviours, but to actually go into it to try and clear it. The danger is if you just go, you know, if you just negotiate and balance yourself, the danger is you don't actually get into what is really going on inside. In that these negative behaviours usually don't happen without some form of cause. You know, this tendency to go cyclically around beating ourselves up or setting ourselves up for failure usually has some kind of primary cause inside the body, an emotional charge in the system which is causing this mental behaviour to be created and recreated all the time. And by investigating and going into that, we can start to clear it. And that doesn't always clear the whole emotional pattern. You know, I had a lot of experiences of having a huge charge inside my system and being driven into negativity a lot of the time. And then I would go into all the negativity in the group room when I started to do a lot of group therapy, go into all the shit and start to clear it, to a point where I believe I cleared a great deal of it. But I could still see my mental patterns were in the negative. But, you know, that I could be seeing someone I was really attracted to, but I still felt like, not good enough as I start to move towards them. But then without a charge in the system underneath it, there's not much to hold that mental behaviour in place, if that makes sense. You know, it's like I can then, hey, what am I thinking? Of course I can do that. Of course I can chat to this person.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's no charge in the system anymore. So this element of deep investigation and then trying to get in there rationally and clear stuff, you know, actually face what's actually going on inside, starts to clear it. And you don't need to have, you know, on a temporary level, yes, you can have strategies, but on a deeper level, you can investigate what's really happening inside.
I'd imagine it can just warp and evolve as well to not actually be the real reason it happened in the first place, because they say you don't remember your past as it was anyway, it doesn't mean it doesn't feel real. But your reasons just evolve because of the habit that it's just like cyclically run through time and time again.
Yeah. I mean, the mind doesn't have the capacity. You know, my mum left me when I was a little baby. My parents left me when I was a little baby. But I didn't really develop a kind of low self-esteem from that, probably till I was about 7 or 8, when my mind was could think properly and could start to reflect on why that might have happened. And the wound was, you know, the deepest wound was the fear of unlovability for me, that my mum had left me because I wasn't lovable. And a better option was to be bad, that I was bad. And so I started to act out bad, because in my child mind, it seemed it was better to think that I was bad and to become a criminal and be a dropout and stuff like this, rather than the thought that I wasn't lovable, not good enough, totally unacceptable. And so it wasn't that this was set up when I was a little baby. It was set up when I started to introspect, because my mind didn't have the thinking capacity when I was a little baby. I can't imagine that it did. You know, it hasn't really developed properly yet, the brain. But when you start to introspect it on my childhood, that's when I started to develop that complex, as I see it. Yeah. And of course we frame our childhood in certain ways. And you can change the framing to make it positive if you've been framing it negative. But again, if you don't take the stuff out of the body, you haven't really achieved very much. There's a very popular therapy, it was very popular about 20 years ago, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. Anybody heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was brought out, I think, Richard Bandler, Stephen Grinder, I can't remember the other guy's name, 2 of them anyway. And they taught people how to reframe your thought patterns, so when they're negative, to make them positive. And for a while it was a big, big thing. A very famous, probably the most famous personal trainer, Tony Robbins, was a huge proponent of this. He had an experience, so he relates, of being an underachieving student at school, low self-esteem, no job, shabby clothing, right mess. He did a few sessions of NLP and just totally transformed himself, you know, and came out. And there can be individuals for who something simply reframing stuff in your mind can create a total transformation. But what became clear in the NLP movement after about 10, 15 years was that Anthony Robbins was a very rare individual that this could happen to, and that most people actually will either start to occupy a delusional world in their mind when they're constantly reframing and trying to make swishing and whatever the other technique was that they're doing. You know, they'll just become detached from their body, or they'll just keep collapsing down. And this is because, and so NLP kind of has now disappeared a little bit. You know, from where it was 15, 20 years ago, it was a massive big thing in our culture, and it was new and it was exciting, and a lot of people who were into positivity, the Yes Group in London, were all into NLP, and now it's fallen off a little bit because people start to realise I became totally fucking unreal. I became totally unreal,
well,
and no one could relate to me.
advertising, because that's what it does, is create unreality.
Yeah, yeah. And the reason it does that, we'll look at tomorrow. Because I don't want to go on and on, and I'm aware sometimes it can be a bit too much to take in, and it's useful to just do it in stages a bit. So does anyone have a question that they don't mind putting online? Or a personal insight on any of that?
So you said that what we have to do is that we have to go deep into these like unconsciousness that we're dealing with, these negative and suppressed emotions. What I want to say is like many.
Well, I didn't quite. What I'm saying, just to be clear, is you got to be vigilant. You know, like lady here is sharing. You know, she could see that she was being driven by an unconscious part of her mind, by a complex setup in childhood. And then you can say, okay, what's that about? Where is that trying to drive me?
Yeah.
And go consciously in that direction with awareness.
With awareness.
Yeah.
I got it.
It's not like you can just say, okay, I'm going to drive into a deep unconscious. It sounds, it's like something off Star Trek, you know, I'm driving into a deep unconscious. It's not even necessarily so useful. It could be okay.
Bring some awareness in.
Well, you just got to, you've got to be vigilant. Hey, what's going on in my mind?
Yeah.
You know, where am I coming from in this? Am I always looking to go out with a sexy blonde because I feel really shit about myself? And I think if I had a partner that looked really great, that I would be whole now.
I
would
have
be
that
okay.
like a lot actually. Like literally, I always like believe even like when I'm forming relationships with partners, and that's why like afterwards I became a bit of needy. It's like I just think that like if I have like I have this idea, for example, oh, I need to get the 10. You know what 10 means, right?
You mean the prettiest one?
Yeah, the prettiest one. I think like if I'm gonna be with the 10, I'm gonna, all my sobers, I'm gonna be resolved, I'm gonna be whole now, I'm gonna feel good about myself.
And is that realistic?
No, but I also have to.
So then the investigation is what's going on in me that I believe that.
Yeah.
That I have to get a trophy girlfriend, essentially.
What's going on in me? Okay.
Yeah, that's what you got to introspect on. What's going on in me? Why do I believe I have to get a trophy girlfriend to be okay?
Do you recommend journaling as a way of kind of keeping track and holding yourself to account in terms of these things? Because I think talking about it now, it's like, okay, yeah, I get it, but I'm not. I think like it just happens so regularly that I don't catch it nearly as much as probably it happens. So only recently I've become much more aware of it as a dynamic. That whole kind of setting a benchmark that's just unrealistically high and then not achieving it. So yeah, do you recommend like trying to record that process as much as you can?
I think that's very, very useful, and that's a good step to move forwards. You know, because you know now we've been doing this work for a day and a half, and you're probably in a more aware space inside yourself, and you can really have aha moments and see things. But you know, you want to try and as much as you can establish that. So writing things down, you know, I think if that works for you, so that then later on you don't kind of think, what was that bollocks? Yeah, right. 25 sound salutations tomorrow, and I'll feel much better. You know, or you know that kind of process. Just if writing down helps, then writing down is good. And I think for a lot of people, it helps to really somewhere own it. Same as like sharing about it. You know, if we share about something that's going on inside, it's harder to disown it afterwards because we know that everybody else knows. We're not keeping it inside anymore.
It's interesting that you say low self-esteem is a defence mechanism. I never really looked at it like that. I just saw it more of more of a component of who I am, if you know what I mean. Now I can see it as a mechanism. It's almost like, well, you've got a choice to remove that. You don't have to actually play that defence out, do you? Like he could have juiced his chips and he would have still been on the juicing program. you know, so that, you know, it's how you perceive it.
Yeah.
And the mechanism that's in place that makes you perceive it that way, or you say, well, I fucked it up now because I had chips, but that's just, you know, that low self-esteem defence mechanism kicking in to keep you. Yeah. You can look at these habitual patterns and start to almost step a little bit away from them and look at them objectively, like what are they trying to achieve?
What are they trying to achieve? Which is usually to drive you into a certain core part of yourself. We'll look at this tomorrow, but it's trying to drive you, the thought process that's going on, of a behavioural process. For example, a lot of people here are doing it, but just with your example, setting a very high target with a yoga practice, not doing it and beating yourself up. The underlying intention, it's like a pull. It's a pull from one, it's like a planet, it's like a planet, and it's exerting a gravitational pull, an energetic pull on you from your unconscious mind. It's pulling you, it's trying to pull your awareness right into the shit. It's trying to pull you there. But what you're doing is kind of half going there, and then going back, and then half going there, and then going back. But we'll look at this more tomorrow. But what you can then decide, what you can do if you've got enough awareness is say, okay, there's something on the fringes of my awareness, like an unknown planet almost. Something in the fringes of my psyche that's pulling me somewhere. And it's pulling me in this direction, self-beating up, self-sabotaging. Is there something there? And then you can look at some process work where you can try just consciously to really go into that space and feel it. Because the underlying thing I want to say, just to complete with anxiety, is what these things, this defensive layer can actually be really useful. Can anyone see why?
It says like what we have stored down inside.
In a sense.
Does it create the choice for you to actually go into that space or not?
Yes, it can be a signpost.
You can go, right, shall I just be complicit to the defence strategy, or shall I use it and sort of move it away?
Yeah.
And then maybe if you're in control of it, you can bring it back in when it becomes a bit too much tough. So
Because-
you almost
Because it's not always self-sabotage, is it? Sometimes you give yourself targets to reach, and you need to ask yourself, well, do I stand for something, or do I just give up?
Yeah.
And maybe those 12 sun salutations were achievable, and in that case you might have just needed to go, well, what do I stand for? Am I a person that gives up, or am I a person that actually does what I say? I mean, maybe there's that.
It depends on your individual awareness and what you can see. If you're being driven from an unconscious kind of core somewhere, or if, hey, I do really want to step up. That's my conscious choice. Are you aware of the choice?
Yeah, because it's a conversation to yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like if you let yourself down with your target, that's really bad for your self-esteem.
Yeah. I mean, on a deep level, all of the trauma and conditioning is good. It's good because, like I said yesterday or the day before, if I had zero trauma, I'm sure I would just be fucking lazing around in some shithole satellite town of England, 58 years old, probably with cancer and boring wife and kids that I'm totally not interested in, having some shit job in the civil service. All the shit and being totally driven, being utterly motherfucking competitive, having a dad who's a complete motherfucker who never gave you any life, a Dan Pena kind of dad, if you know him as a motivational coach in America. Someone who's a complete bastard on top of you all the time also can cause you, as an utter underachiever, to step the fuck up and really be a total human being as well. But if you're just being... You what?
Don't tell them that though.
No, but that's it. Also, it's all of this stuff that's operated can really work. The thing is, there's not a strategy that is right for anybody. You just have to practice. There's no, we love to find a blanket strategy and put it out, but there is no blanket strategy. That's why I work with the body and the blocks. I'm not telling you who to be. I'm not giving you a strategy that will work for everyone, because there is no strategy that will work for everyone. And most therapists that are trying to do that, they're just trying to sell something, and they're unconscious as well, in my opinion. You just take out the blocks with this work. You're taking out the blocks. That's all you're doing. So who you are, you're going to be more of yourself with less blocks.
Yeah.
That thing about attaching self-esteem to your achievement, is that a right thing, do you think? Because if you attach yourself...
Is it right for you?
No, but is
So
it,
you're
right,
looking-
is it a right thing? If you attach self-esteem to your achievements constantly, isn't that sort of bringing in mind? Because bringing in that mind kind of, or driving your mind, driving your, how you feel about yourself. Because those targets that we talked about here are all sort of, I'm going to achieve this, I'm going to achieve that. They're not necessarily targets that actually coming from your gut, coming from inside, So is that a good thing?
You see,
Always
the whole
yourself
idea,
is
the whole idea
different.
though, the whole idea, I won't say name on live, but the whole idea that there is a strategy that can be depicted as good or bad for everyone, that is the belief that you have to get rid of.
Can you repeat what you said again?
The belief that there's a strategy that's going to work for everyone, that is the belief you have to get rid of. It's the mind. It's totally the mind saying, how should I be, how should I do things? What you've got to do is vigilance, and then start to be practical and intelligent. What's going on inside of me? It's all personal at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's all personal.
We're always looking for shortcuts. The brain's
We're always looking for shortcuts. You know?
And I wonder if it's different for you at different times.
Yes.
You know, like one technique, like, you know, being a hard ass on myself with,
Yes.
with one thing might be really beneficial in that particular thing, and hitting that goal might be really important.
Yeah.
But then in another thing, it's actually a different motivation, and therefore, actually, you know, maybe it's not worth pushing myself to that limit and hurting myself. So,
Yeah.
because, like you said, you know, you push yourself so far, and then you break yourself to the point where you can't go back and continue it, and it's a journey.
You put yourself up.
Mm.
Yeah, you break. You know, your will snaps you, and then it's like you don't pursue that.
Yeah.
Like, if I broke the biodynamics process by trying to do, like you said, an hour's worth of burn arch, and then it's like I never touch it again.
Yeah.
You know, all
Then
the benefit
yeah,
from
exactly.
it could be gone. But I achieved my goal. I did it for an hour. You know, I did it for an hour. Like, you know, whatever.
No,
And the only way to know is to keep being vigilant in the moment. What's going on with me? Rather than, some of us, we learn, particularly the male side, we learn what are the strategies to use for life. You know, how should life be?
Yeah.
You know, how should society be? You know, but all of that is somewhere, it's never going to fucking work.
Yeah.
You know, we have that side of our mind, but you have to look what's working for me. If every individual in the world is taking out their blocks and just being themselves, the world will be fine. It doesn't need one iota of political bullshit.
Yeah.
It doesn't need any of this stuff. You know, it's just you don't need any of these. You just have to get really personal and real about who you are and what's going on inside with this vigilance.
Yeah, I think having, you know, like achieving stuff is brilliant, and
Yeah.
you need that.
Yeah.
But what I just going back to that, I'm going to let it go. But you know, attaching your self-esteem to that, I think, is bad because that creates a lot of problem. You know, achieving stuff, doing it, you know, striving for something, it's fantastic. You know, we all need that in our life, whatever that is.
Yeah,
whatever shape or
Yeah.
But linking your, you know, the ways that you feel about yourself to that, that's where I see the problem.
Yeah.
You
If
know?
you need it all the time to feel good about yourself.
Yeah, if you need that to feel, yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's like if that is always, you know, what gives you self-satisfaction and self-worth,
Yeah.
then it really, you know, then that's a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you cannot always achieve stuff.
Yeah.
There will be failures,
Yeah.
which will send you in,
Yeah.
in a deep, you know, in a place of.
It's good not to come from a place of unconsciousness, but at the same time, I mean, it's so personal and so kind of unexplored. You know, we haven't really gone very far as a civilization like this. You know, it's also that we don't really know, in a sense. There can, you know, I was watching this movie Free Solo. You know, did anyone see it about this climbing guy
I haven't seen it.
he's obsessed with climbing El Capitan,
Yeah.
which is this thing in Yosemite,
Oh yeah.
and doing it without a rope, which no one has ever done before. You know, and you can see in him that he's basically autistic. But he's got problems from an MRI scan that he had problems with his amygdala and could not feel emotions properly, basically, and probably only in extremely intense, dangerous situations, such as being 1,000 foot off the ground with no rope on a sheer rock face, you know, would give him feeling and sense of power and satisfaction in life. And yet, he was totally driven, and he tried to do it once, and he had to bail at a certain point and stop, you know. And then for months, he was in low self-esteem and shit. And then he just sort of decided, I have to go and do it. The most crazy thing I've ever seen in my fucking life, you know.
Yes.
I was freaking out watching it. My girlfriend took about 2 days to sleep again afterwards, you know. It was so intense filming this guy live when he could have died at any moment. One mistake in a 4-hour climb, one slight error, and you're dead. Basically, you're falling 3,000 foot dead. No rope, no support, t-shirt, shorts, climbing boots. You know, it's just complete insanity. And yet, on a certain level, he did really achieve something fucking amazing. And for me, there's like a huge, well, I don't know what's right, you know, in a sense. You don't know. There aren't really any rules.
No, but then, and then also on the other hand, it's those things.
Yeah.
you know, where we actually come to the point where there's resistance, and how we get through resistance, you know, they are good. They are the best things you'll ever have. Because those uncomfortable moments are the moments where you grow. When you go through that resistance and defense. So, you know, they're actually necessary. So again, it's shifting that mindset from, well, this is fucked up, I can't do it. To, well, actually, yes, you know, yes, I can, I'm going to try and do it, or I will do it. You know, and that is actually a challenge. So actually recognizing or differentiating between the two. You know, actually I could grow through this, or actually realizing that, having enough self-awareness to recognize. Because we do need those things. Going through anxiety or something like this is actually very useful. You know, we can't get rid of anxiety. It's a normal emotion. You know, we all have it. It's how you deal with it and what you learn through it, isn't it?
Exactly. You know, because you know you're probably doing this thing yesterday, and at some point it's like so fucking intense. You're right on the edge. You're totally aware of your body because it's so fucking painful. You know, but like in that moment, you know that is where development happens. Your mind is freaking out left, right, and centre, but in that moment is where development happens.
Something last that I wanted to add. I really resonated with what Oksana said before. Did I say it right? Oksana?
That's it.
Yeah,
but you shouldn't really say her name on.
Sorry.
Maria.
But let's not go to. Let's not. I don't want to go on for too long because I want to do some
the last
work.
thing that I want to say actually is that many times I caught myself into that thing of what she said. Oh my God, like this. I have now to go to another workshop, and then like I end up like beating myself like always, because I'm like, oh yeah, I schedule like through the year, I'm going to go through these workshops and then there, but when I'm not in the workshop, I'm doing some normal things, and so I'm being present, and I beat myself down. Oh, you didn't do the workshop, so you're not going to feel better. You piece of shit. That's what.
There's always mental strategies, and it's good, you know. Anxiety, it's important to understand, also for you, you know, but like. Let's switch off here. Let's do enough of this.